truth that I'm working with today is that we are designed to be happy. That's what we've been working with for 3 weeks. We are designed to be happy. Now, that's going to come as a shock to my mother, who kind of had the Al-Anon salute, you know, that, oh, life is so hard. Or my father, who would send his 6-year-old, his 12-year-old, and his 15-year-old out to pick prunes every summer in the hot sun. Happiness was not his concern. But we are designed to be happy in this life. And we're in the final week of exploring the question, what makes us happy? What makes us happy? Because I think a lot of us are living lives that aren't exactly happy, but if we were to ask ourselves, well, what would make us happy? I'm not sure we would know the answer to that question. So we're taking some time to explore what would make us happy. And so here's what we've talked about so far. Happiness is more about who than what. Happiness is more about who than about what. You know, on days that you feel sad, you can almost always trace it back to an issue in a relationship. You can almost always trace it back to a problem we're having with somebody else. Either we weren't enough, or they weren't enough, or something was going wrong in a relationship. Because happiness is more about who than what. Now, we need to be careful here because this is not a call to poverty. This is not a call to poverty. There are rich people who are happy and poor people who are happy. There are rich people who are sad and poor people who are sad. What it is called to, though, is for us to focus on relationships in our lives, because people who are poor and happy and people who are rich and happy have one thing in common, and that is they have invested in relationships. We've talked before about what we sow is what we reap. And a lot of us have sown very destructive relationships in our lives, and we're still living with the results of that. We're still living with the consequences of that, and that has not made us happy. Now, the good news is that we're new thought people, and we understand that there's always hope for us. Because no matter what we've sown in the past, we can re-sow in a new direction right now, today, in any of our relationships, and bring happiness into our lives. There's hope for all of us. Last week we spoke about 8 ways in which we could behave, 8 mindsets. They're often called the Beatitudes. We call them here happy generators. They make us happy. They were from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And if we could incorporate those 8 ways of thinking, those 8 behaviors into our lives, we would know a different kind of happiness than we know right now. Now, so for all of those that we've talked about before, they're on CDs out in the lobby afterwards. If you haven't been here during the sermon, they're also on our YouTube channel. So our YouTube channel is now on the front page of your bulletin. And so you can check us out. But listen, you got to come to church. Okay, don't be making that mistake, all right? All right, because would you want to miss what just happened here? No, not at all. All right. So we've also said that peaceful people have peace. They've found peace in themselves. And you know, happy people, when you look at them and you talk to them, they're peaceful about themselves. They like themselves. They're okay with themselves. You know, and you kind of are amazed by it sometimes because they don't look as good as you. They don't drive as good as you. They don't dance as good as you. They don't do anything as good as you, but they're happy with themselves. And, you know, here I am. I'm, going to the gym. I'm giving up cupcakes. I'm doing all that stuff. And I'm not always happy. I'm not always. Doesn't matter what's going on the outside. It's what's going on the inside. The other thing we've discovered is that happy people are at peace with other people. They're at peace with other people. See, peace is the common denominator here. Happy people aren't angry. They're not bitter. They're not always seeking revenge in their life. They're not always being victims in their life. Happy people are peaceful with other people. And again, it's sometimes amazing because it's not always because things went well for them. They've gone through real crisis in their lives, and sometimes we know about that crisis, and we wonder how they can be so happy. You know, they've been fired. They've been left in a disrespectful way. They've had troubles in their life with their kids. And yet they found a way to be happy. They found a way to make peace with those situations. The other thing we talked about was that happy people, for the most part, have found peace with God. They found peace with God. You know, and that, I'm telling you, it's tricky here in New Thought. It's tricky here in New Thought to make peace with God, because if we came from a different kind of theology, one in which there was a sacred text and said, okay, if you follow this sacred text, you will find peace with God. Whether it's the Bible or the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita or the sutras or whatever it is, if we came from that kind of a background where we could look at that and say, follow this and you will find peace with God. But very often those theologies are talking about an entity called God. And here in New Thought, this is what makes it tricky. Here in New Thought, we say that God is everything, everyone, and everywhere. And so what we're saying is we have to find peace with everything, everyone, and everywhere if we want to claim that we found peace with God. And that's a bigger chore for us, but absolutely we can begin to do it. See, we have to retrain ourselves. When you came here, when you were little infants, you came here trusting everybody. You came here at peace with everybody. You had to learn how to not trust people. You had to learn that you needed to protect yourself. And now we have to unlearn all of that. See, when we say no weapon can be formed against us, what we're saying is when we are healed of those things which hurt us inside, when we heal ourselves of those things which hurt us on the inside, nobody can hurt us from the outside. When you make peace with all the mean things that people say to you. You know, when my sister was recently divorced, many years ago, somebody said something mean about that. And it's because she felt less than, because she hadn't made her marriage work. When she healed up that less than, nobody could hurt her. We have to make peace. We have to retrain ourselves to make peace with God in our lives. Well, today I'm going to give you Reverend George's opinion, and it is only an opinion. It's only an opinion as to how to make peace with all people, all places, and all things. And that is this: go and sin no more. Now, before you run out of the church, let me remind you that what sin means to us is missing the mark. It's an Aramaic term in the language of Jesus. And it means miss the mark. But here's what happens, I think, when we take the way the word sin and say miss the mark, we kind of give ourselves an excuse to not be as vigilant about it as those people who are worried about going and sinning no more. See, when we have an intention, we set an intention. Maybe you set an intention, I'm not going to gossip. Okay, that's missing the mark when we gossip. But you have one more little tiny thing that you learned about somebody at work, and it just needs to be said to somebody. See? Or you told your spouse, I'm not going to put any more money on the credit card. But then you saw that shiny new putter out there, and you just had to do something. Or I love the story. I love the story about the woman who tells her husband, I'm not putting any more clothes on the credit card. And he said, that's good. And so she goes out, and he finds out she puts a new dress on the credit card. And he says to her, honey, I thought you said you weren't going to put any more clothes on the credit card. And she said, I know. But this dress, it just looks so good on me. And he said, well, why didn't you do what we learn at church and say, get behind me, Satan? And she said, I did. And Satan said, looks good from behind, too. We want to be careful. We want to be careful. Okay? So in my humble opinion, in my life, if I would develop more of a discipline that those are worried about sinning do, a discipline that says, I commit to really taking seriously those behaviors in my life that are keeping me separate from God, keeping me separate from being happiness, that presence of God within. Because our definition of sin, like those found in churches, in synagogues, in mosques, have a consequence. They have a result. And that result is not delayed. Our result isn't delayed. It's not a hell somewhere that's off in the future. It is right now. Our result is right now. And it keeps us from being happy in this life. So I want us to take it as seriously as those who are fire and brimstone people. See, we in New Thought, we let ourselves off the hook a lot in sowing in another direction because we understand that there's not a punishing God who's ready to bring down the wrath if we make a mistake, if we miss the mark, if we sin. There is no one like that. But there is a God within us who is patient and loving and will allow us to wallow in our unhappiness for as long as we care to wallow in it. Our work is to become awake and aware and begin to take responsibility for our sins. Sin no more means to go out and get happy. Bring happiness and peace into your lives. Well, you know, the very person that we sin the most against in our life, you and I, ourselves. We sin against ourselves the most. We miss the mark with ourselves the most. And one of the most common, I could have chosen a million examples, but I'm going to choose this one because we're getting ready to go to the holidays, getting ready to go to family meals and such, and be with people who maybe don't come to this church and who maybe hold you in a snapshot. They forgot you're a moving picture. You're changing all the time, but they've got you in the snapshot of when you were whatever age. So I want to talk about this one, and it's called We Accept Phony Limits from Others Without Questioning Them. Whether others are individuals, their family members, their friends, or their society. We accept phony limits without ever questioning them. You know, I'm reminded of the story I've told here on occasion about the way that they train elephants. And you know, the way they train elephants is when they're baby elephants, they will take a length of chain and they will stake that chain and then put the chain around the elephant's leg. And so the baby elephant can only go as far around in a circle as the chain will allow them to go. And it doesn't go any farther. And then after a period of time, a relatively short period of time, the trainer takes the chain off the elephant. And the elephant will go no farther than what that chain used to allow them to go. You and I do that in our lives. We've accepted phony limits and we've allowed ourselves not to go beyond them in our life. You know, I remember a time I was sober for about 10 minutes. And I decided I wanted to go on a date. So I asked the person on a date, and I thought, well, a good sober date, I didn't know what a sober date was, but it seemed to me a good sober date would be to go to a skating rink and skate around in a circle. That would be good. And so I asked the person out, and we got in the car, and we're going to the skating rink, and then I remembered on the way, I haven't skated since I was 8 years old. And I thought, what am I doing? But we were already there, so we went in, and we put some shoes on and we kind of wobbled around and we had a good time. And then the man who ran the skating rink said, oh, it's couples skate. Now, I had just been accepted a position as the executive director of the Council on Aging in Sonoma County. It was a very high visible thing. And so I said to this person, I said to her, I don't think that we should, I think we should sit this one out. See, because, 30 years ago being gay was different than it is now. And so I thought, we better just sit this out. So I'm steaming because, everybody's out there having, it hasn't even started yet, but I'm thinking everybody's going to go out there and have a good time, and I'm gay, and this is terrible, and I can't go out there, and what's wrong with the world, and blah, 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 blah. And the music picks up, and all of a sudden, women are out there skating with their best friends and with their sisters, and mothers and daughters are out there skating, and nobody would have even noticed us, but I accepted a phony limit, and I allowed it to limit where I wanted to go. Now, that's a fairly simple example, but let me give you an example that Deepak Chopra talks about of a woman named Rita who went into surgery, had abdominal surgery, and it was a very successful surgery. She came out of the surgery, no problems after the surgery, but she couldn't get well. And nobody could figure out what the problem was. And so the doctors had her hypnotized. And so during the hypnosis, the guy who was hypnotizing her said he found out that while she was in having the surgery done, she heard the doctor say, who was operating on her, say, she won't live throughout the day. So the doctor goes to the surgeon and says, did you really say that while she was in surgery? And he said, yes, I did, but I was talking about a different patient. So he went and told the woman what he had learned, and she began to get better. See, we accept phony limits, and we allow ourselves to be kept smaller. Emerson says, do the thing you fear, and the thing that you fear will set you free. Do the thing that you fear, and the thing that you fear will set you free. Well, the second way we sin against ourselves is by keeping ourselves small. I want to invite you to have a spiritual practice this week, and that is to blow your own horn. That's your spiritual practice. Now, I'm not talking about being a big blowhard. We'll leave that to the politician with a comb over. We'll just we won't get in his stuff. We'll just remind ourselves that we want to be a little bit of a blowhard and share with people our accomplishments. We're not good at that. As a human race, we're not good at sharing what it is we've accomplished in this life. And I'm not talking always about the big things. Sometimes we just want to share, I forgave somebody that I never thought I'd be able to forgive. We need to share that. That's an accomplishment. That's something, this whole thing of blowing your own horn came from Old England, when the gentility would send out a servant to blow a horn before something that was going to be said that was important. We need to keep that in our head. We need to say important things to each other. Maybe it's something big, like I got over my addiction. I'm dealing with my addiction. Or I bought a house. Or the teenager that was giving me fits is now getting back on the right track. We need to share those things. Now, today is Dia de los Muertos. It is a day called the Day of the Dead. It is a Latin custom in which people invite their ancestors to come back for the day. And they set up an altar in their home. And on the altar, they may have pictures of the person who has passed on. They have often things that signify dead people, like the skeletons that we have here. They always have a little food in case when the ancestors come back they're hungry. They have a little water. They have some flowers. And it's a day in which is a celebration. In fact, Latin people tell me it's discourteous to be sad on Dios de los Muertos because it is a day of happiness, and we don't want to be sad when our ancestors come back to visit. So thank you to our fabulous Sunday coordinator, Catherine Rydell, for putting this altar together. Yeah, fabulous. And in your bulletin, you will notice a little card. And in the little card, do you all get it? Okay. Raise your hand if you do not have a writing utensil. If you don't have a writing utensil, please raise your hand. And in the card, it says... Thank you. In the card, it says, here's what I'd like you to know. Raise your hand if you need a writing utensil, and we're coming around as quick as we can. Can we get some more volunteers to help with this? Yeah. Raise your hand if you have a... Keep your hand up. Keep it up high so they can actually see your hand. Keep your hand up high if you need a pen. Okay. All right. So now let's just be still for a moment and go within. And I want you to think of an ancestor, whether it's someone who's gone on this other side. It could be a family member, it could be a friend. And I would like you to share with them something in your life that you're proud of, that you would want them to know. Here's what I want you to know. Here's what I want you to know is that teenager that was having a hard time now is married and has kids of their own. Here's what I want you to know. When you passed, my sister and I were fighting, and now we're not. Here's what I want you to know. I know you were worried about my drinking, and I got a handle on it. Here's what I want you to know. I have a house of my own now. Here's what I want you to know. Whatever it is that you would want an ancestor to know, just go within. And you'll play a little music, Sam. Just a little music. Play a little music. Just a little piano right now. Not right now. Here's what I want you to know. Another minute, and then the ushers are going to start releasing the aisles. Please don't come up until the usher releases. Okay, Scarlett. You can start releasing now, ushers. And there are baskets on each end. We just invite you to put your card in a basket. Now the whole song. So we simply take these wishes, these desires, these invitations, these messages into our heart, knowing that the presence of God is within each and every one of them. I give thanks for all of the ancestors who have influenced all of the people in this room. I give thanks to God for bringing them to us the first time and the second time and every time we call for their presence. I release this word into the law, and together we say, and so it is.